Hi everyone, thank you for joining our A Day in the Life series. Today we'll be learning about the work of a data engineer with Coen Jonker. First of all, Coen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm honored.
So before we get started with our little interview or getting to know Coen and his work better, I just want to introduce myself and ELU briefly. My name is Lara. I'm the community manager at European Leadership University. So I coordinate and create different communities, including the learner community within our master and bachelor's programs, but also wider communities through webinar and educational series like this. So specifically, this series is for aspiring data professionals. Data, of course, is very trendy. People say it's the sexiest job of the 21st century. But I think there's a lot of confusion about what actually a data scientist is, what a data engineer is, or a data analyst. So with this series, we hope to educate and to learn a bit more from people who are actually actively working in the industry, what their day-to-day life is really like, and also how they have started their journey in the data field. So again, today, Coen is here with a data engineer, or actually a data scientist turned data engineer. So we'll be talking a little bit today also about the distinction between these two roles. And currently he's working for Friesland Campina as a data engineer, a dairy company in the Netherlands. So we'll also be talking about what do you do as a data engineer for the milk industry. But thank you again, Coen, and thank you everyone for joining. We have a few questions planned that I'll be asking, but we'll also hope to hear some of your questions. So if you have any questions for Coen, please drop them either in the chat or below in the Q&A, and I will do my best to also go over them by the end of the call. So without further ado, let's learn a little bit more about you, Coen. So for people like myself who are not too familiar with the data industry, what does a data engineer do?
So I think the term, so an engineer is someone who solves problems using proven principles on the one hand, and a lot of creativity and problem solving and duct tape on the other hand. And that's exactly what a data engineer does as well. They use principles on the one side and creativity and digital duct tape on the other hand to solve data problems in companies. So the question translates to what kind of problems do you solve? And I think there's two. One is indeed data is a hot topic. Many companies want to do something with data, specifically get value out of their data. We'll probably get to talk about that a bit later as well. But to do that, they have to get their data. They have to get their data in their fingers. And the data is usually scattered over a bunch of legacy systems. Maybe there's relevant data online. Maybe it's with suppliers or with other companies. Or very often it's just in a bunch of Excel files or in people's heads. So the first job of a data engineer is to extract this data, combine it in useful ways, automate it, assure the quality, and make sure that projects and data scientists, data analysts, and business people can use this data. Problem two is that we have a lot of data scientists and we get more and more of them. Next to that, also finance professionals, risk professionals, business analysts, they start to do more and more things that look a lot like data science, creating models, doing regressions, even toying around with machine learning. Not sure if it's a good thing, but nowadays anybody could actually train a machine learning algorithm. And it yields a lot of solutions. It yields a lot of visualizations and models and things that may be valuable, but then it's necessary that they can be used reliably. So the second issue we solve is how do you get from a pile of Jupyter notebooks or Excel models, how do you get to a solution that is can stably and reliably run in a corporate environment, get its input data and give output to non-technical people.
So what does that mean for your day-to-day work? Are you generally like behind the computer coding, or how do you work with other teams as well? Do you work more independently or within a data team?
Yeah, so I struggle a bit with it because it varies a lot. So, and that I think it also is very dependent on the maturity of the organization you're in. So I would imagine that, for example, if you're a data engineer for a digitally native company like I don't know, Google, Bol.com, I think the work is very different. You would be very focused on a specific part. Since Friesland Campina is a dairy company, I'm doing a lot of different things. So, for example, today I had a meeting about a project I'm in, which is about factory data. We get factory data into our system and run algorithms on top of them. Yeah, then I'm doing a manual data update, which is indeed sitting behind my computer. But the next part of my day could be coaching some business analysts how to write his own Python web scrapers, or chat with my boss about what kind of roles we need in our team for a growing team. How can we do data engineering more professionally next year? And how can we do better in 3 years from now? So there's also a lot of organizational structuring and strategy involved in my role at the moment. And I think the last part is I work a lot with the solution architect. And we chat a lot about how would we want things to be standardized, because we started along with a lot of duct tape, a lot of ad hoc solutions, and now we want to get things standardized. We want to speed up on delivery. We want to make sure that things are more stable, and then you need to make choices. And I think a lot of my mental power at least goes into getting these decisions and making sure they are sound. Does that make sense in any way, or is that way too high level?
I think that's great. And I think one thing that really stands out, we've been talking to people who, like you said, work for these more digital native companies like Bol.com before. But to work for a dairy company, a company that is known for like producing milk products, you wouldn't think so quickly of a data team. So can you talk a little bit more about what it is like specifically to work for Friesland Campina and the culture there?
Okay, yeah, so Friesland Campina is a big company. There's 32,000 people. I definitely do not know all of them. We're active in about 80 countries. And I think the culture varies a lot per department. So I used to be, like you said, I used to be a data scientist also in Friesland Campina in a commercial department. There we had a much more, I would say, corporate culture than the IT department where I'm now. So I would now actually, I could go to the office wearing jeans and just a normal t-shirt, and we have a very flat organization. In general, Friesland Campina for me is a very good employer. They take care of employees. They care a lot about health, well-being of employees, great career programs. So it's a good company to work for. And then when it comes to data, we have a lot of different things in data. And we're trying things. I think the most of our more mature data applications, they're around digital marketing, which is also the domain I don't like to work in a lot, because everybody's doing digital marketing. Everybody's doing, hey, how can I get my website in such a way that a couple of people more click on the little button with the green shopping cart on it. And I think it's boring. It's just proving that it's easy to fool mammals into doing something they don't really want. So we also have a lot of applications that are not in digital marketing, and they're on, I don't know, economic analysis. They're on supply chain, maintenance. We did a project on HR, which I think was interesting to some extent. We have around sustainability, there's some cases that are coming in. So it's very varied. And that's great. And what I love about Friesland Campina, or in general, a company that makes something, is that there is so much real issues. There are so many real issues that you think, okay, we could do something with data here, if only if we can get the data and figure out how to do it and get people to do something else. So it's very varied. It's a good employer, really, really good culture, I think, a lot of freedom.
That's great. I think it sounds like you kind of get the benefits from being in a well-established, a more older Dutch company, but at the same time, because maybe data is new within this company, it's still very creative and entrepreneurial as well.
Yeah, and what I also think, I'm not really sure what I really love about Friesland Campina is our shareholders are dairy farmers. And they do care, of course, about the milk price, and they care about profit. But they don't care as much about dividend as most regular shareholders would. They care also that our great-grandchildren can be dairy farmers and have a successful dairy company there. So I think Friesland Campina has a lot of opportunities to also invest in things for the longer term. And data and analytics is one of the regions in IT where strategically we've made the decision to invest more and grow. That makes it a very cool place to work at the moment.
Great, and you said you have been working on different projects, not so much in marketing, but for example, HR, sustainability. Can you talk a bit about, or maybe give an example of the impact you have had on the organization, either here or any of the previous organizations you worked at?
Yeah, so that's a really hard question, because I am not very good in seeing my own impact at in the moment. But if I look back at things I did, I see very big impact. So some of the solutions I've created have really are really used to drive better decisions, and not all of them are models. But I think the biggest impact I have on business is to provide an alternative to endless spreadsheets with hidden assumptions and doing the same thing every week again, trying to churn out a slide. So an example, I've created once a simple visualization that shows what happened if you average performance targets over a large number of units. So, what that organization did is they had all these performance targets on the units, and they calculate the average, and that average was then the KPI, and that was actually what their contractors were scored on. And I showed them that if you have enough of these units and most of them perform pretty well, you can actually just ignore a couple of them and still score your 95%, 98% target. And I think this visualization really got them thinking about, hey, what kind of calculations do we do on our data and how do we make decisions on top of that? And that I really love. Those kind of things I really love. I love that way more than neural networks or building cool random forest classifiers. I really like it when people learn to think differently about data and to question. My ultimate career goal is that at some point you're in one of these dinosaur companies. Somebody's presenting a slide and say, okay, we want to build this machine and we expect this much profit, and then somebody stands up, maybe some VP of finance stands up, he says, okay, how much loss do you expect? And they say, well, on average, these machines give you like 4% loss. And that VP replies with, okay, but I want to know the standard deviation, and is that even normally distributed? Because before I make a decision on it, I want to know what's my highest probability of error I get, and not like what is the average, because an average is a meaningless number. And if I get companies, leadership in companies to think like that, then I'm a happy man.
Great.
And
so
sometimes it works. Yeah.
So it sounds like the thing you enjoy about your job is not just, let's say, the actual working on the solutions, creating the solutions, but very much seeing the impact and also educating organizations on how they can use data.
I'm a statistic teacher.
Great. Yeah. And for that reason, I feel like you not only need a good technical skill set, but your soft skills should also be very developed as a data engineer. Could you talk a little bit about what kind of skill set you especially use in your role, or you would advise people to develop if they're interested in a data engineer career path?
Yeah. So I can actually say there's a lot of focus on these hard skills because they're easy. In a sense. For most people, it's doable to learn Python or SQL, and it's very easy for a company to measure whether somebody knows Python to a certain level, and it's easy for an educational institution to teach you Python. And the hard part is getting people to change the way they think. Let me think about it. So this is one of the things I'm very bad at, for example, which I really miss in my day-to-day life. But I'm not very good in taking people slowly along a way. So if I think about some end state, I'm very good at thinking about how something should be, how it would be very good, how it would be really nice, and I can also convince people it would be really nice. But then taking them along, like what is the first step we need to take, and how are we going along with that? So this change management, knowing how you get a group of people from saying, no, we're not going to do that, to, okay, let's maybe try this, or hey, how can we get something back from that? How do you get people to start on something new without them seeing the value themselves, or without them really understanding what the something new is? you need to be able to convince business and finance people to write something next to their manual Excel enterprise. And you can never show them there's any benefit to that unless you get them to try it, right? So that, I think, important soft skill that I'm using a bit more is problem analysis, consulting skills, which is being able to quickly understand what's going on in a business domain. Going to a factory, being able to quickly understand what is this machine they're talking about, what is it actually doing, what's coming in, what's going out. So being a quick and agile learner is I think also very important, and that's quite trainable as well. The change management part is a lot harder. Then when it comes to yeah, so that's about soft skills. I think they're really important.
Is that also training you received during your education, or is that something you learned along the way on the work floor?
So looking back, I think my first job, I had a traineeship with a company called Procam. I was sent out to ABN AMRO. I didn't love ABN AMRO very much, but they gave me at the program, they gave me some nice first insights and training about how organizations work and how people work, how decision processes work. But I would say this is a work in progress. It's definitely not my forte, and it's a very important skill to learn. There is theoretics, you can learn about it, and you could learn, and I think every data or change or innovation program should teach them. But yeah, in the end, you also need your flying hours on that. So one of the things I've run into every company, every single company I've been at, with the exception of one very small startup, but is this. As a data scientist, you want to develop software on top of production data. As a data engineer, you want to develop software on top of production data. That's traditionally a big no-no, right? You need to have your fake data, and there you try and test stuff, but it makes no sense to develop data science models on top of fake data. It will be fake models, and there's no. So that discussion, how do you do that? How do you go to an architect that's been there for 30 years and has learned one thing? We do not do development on production data. How do you get them to say, okay, we're going to do some development on production data? That's
and were you successful?
Sometimes. Actually, I think in the end, most companies switch to it. And at most companies, there comes a moment when there's such a strong force towards, hey, we want to be able to use this data in all kinds of innovative solutions. And I think if you go into a company now, this issue has been cracked, but there's probably a new one. There's probably a new one that everybody runs into, and I don't know. So yeah, sometimes successful, sometimes not.
So I want to also talk a little bit about your journey up to this point at Friesland Campina. Some people also in the audience, I think, are just at the footsteps of their data career, or maybe are considering a switch to a data career. So you have gotten your education in artificial intelligence. I think it was quite obvious that you wanted to be in this field, but you did make a switch from this data scientist role to a data engineer role more recently. So can you talk a little bit about how you started out in the field of AI, in the field of data, and how you became a data engineer?
Sure. I'm not sure if it's a very interesting story in that sense. So I've always been intrigued with programming. I've been programming since I was 11. I think a buddy of mine in elementary school taught me QBasic, and I was programming and building stuff. And I've always really loved building stuff in a computer. Like you make some code and then it does something, and it can be quite intelligent if you make smart code in there. I went into AI for the same reason most people went into AI in the early 2000s, which is I wanted to build robots. Yeah, I was quickly cured from that after my first robotics lab. But then I still wanted to apply my skills about, hey, how do you make a computer do smart things? How can you apply that in companies or in a society? So in my mind, decisions in company and society they're usually made by incompetent, uninformed primates that try to use their flawed brains on complex issues. People have this belief that their brain is the culmination of evolution, and I always thought that was bullshit. then in theory, a computer could usually do a better job than a human. So that's what I wanted to do. Graduated in 2013, not the best time to graduate. I was unemployed. I think it's worse now, but it was bad back then. I was unemployed and I wanted to do something with AI in companies. So I applied to this consulting company and they said, yeah, we're going to do that, but we can't sell it right now. And they offered me a job as a JavaScript front-end developer at a salary that I was already making behind the bar at that moment. So I said, well, maybe not the best thing to do. I was also broke. I'd been studying for about 9 years. So I went up to ABN AMRO, worked as a research analyst, didn't like it. Left in 2015. Tip number 1, if you don't like your first job, just leave. Don't wait around for 1.5 years as I did. I really, really regretted that last year, and I don't think it did ABN AMRO any good or me. So if you don't like your first job, you can just quit. If you don't like your fourth job in a year, then maybe you have to think about what you want. But if you don't like the first job, just quit. So then I moved to a consulting company, which was Mobicti. I was their first data scientist. So that was the moment I got the title. I said, okay, I want to be a data scientist. This is apparently a thing. There's people that use scientific methods on company data to make better decisions. So that's how I became a data scientist. I started calling myself one. And of course, I knew machine learning. I knew statistics. I was a good programmer. But back then, yeah, a lot of companies didn't have them yet. It was really a marketing thing back then. Yeah, so how did I go to engineering? Well, it turns out the reality is a bit worse than I thought. It's not just uninformed primates making decisions. It's basically people are just making decisions and then everybody's scrambling to make up stories to make these decisions sound believable. And the reality is that almost no data is available to actually verify decisions or to actually figure out what we did then, what did we expect the outcome was, what was the actual outcome, and what can we learn from that in a causal way. So I thought I need to fix that first, get the data. And then there was a job opening in this really cool team with a manager I really like for a data engineer. So I said, okay, I'll do that. I politely asked him whether he thought I could be possibly able to do, but I would be able to do that job because I was a data scientist up until that moment.
And how has your role, how has your work changed since you switched from that data science role to the data engineer role?
Well, yeah, it changed completely. So I haven't touched Excel since I changed. That's a good thing, but I've also noticed that I'm way further from the business now. Mm-hmm. So there's always 1 or 2 people between me and the business now, and I'm really working on the technology stuff. And I really like that I've been working in a business department for a while before, because I understand the dairy business a bit. I know a bit more about it than many of my colleagues in IT, I guess, or at least in this department. So that changed, got a bit further away from the business and the decision making. The work became more technical. But also the solutions became a lot bigger. I was just building things for my own department before, small scale things. And now I'm building things that potentially scale to the entire company. And that really changed as well. So the breadth of the impact is so you.
So I have just a few last closing questions, but I do also want to encourage anyone who is watching or listening in, if you have any questions, please use the chat or Q&A to ask your questions to Coen as well. So we talked a bit about your journey until now, and what about the future? What do you think might be, let's say not maybe for you personally, but for the field of data, what do you see as one of the most important things to pay attention to for the coming 5 years or so?
Yeah, well, everybody now is getting a bit tired of doing POCs, I guess, from doing the experiments. And so everybody now wants to get value from business, value from their data. And that it used to be that I thought, okay, get a data scientist and he makes a model and I get value from my data. But actually what a data scientist brings you is just more data. It is, I mean, the model data goes in and on the other hand, data comes out. and translating those new insights into decisions and actually changing the business process in a way that you create this value that everybody likes. I think that is a very important thing to watch for in the coming years. There's dozens of frameworks coming up to how to define that, how to do that well. And I think that's where you can make a difference as a data scientist towards the future, or a data engineer. Also, what I think is the focus will be more and more on feature engineering and data combination, and less on model selection. So, but this is my personal opinion. There's people that totally disagree on this, but I think model selection is, in a sense, quite boring. And if you have data that contains certain information, and for example, a support vector machine gets a good result on it, then probably your random forest will get a good result on it as well. And you nowadays more and more of these auto ML things. I'm not necessarily a big fan of them, but they do prove a point that if your data contains information, getting enough of it out of there to get some value, in theory, is not that hard. So, and still Siri doesn't know when I'm just talking, right? Okay, so that's AutoML is definitely a thing, and that will bring more focus on feature engineering and how does my data actually relate to the business processes that I care about, and how should I translate any insights into actual decisions. So that's what the future is going to bring.
Thank you so much, and also a big thank you to everyone for joining. My final question, Coen, is for those of the people that are either live watching with us right now or will be watching this back, what would be the one advice you want to give to people who are just at the start of their career in data?
Make sure you actually start doing things. Like online training is great, and education is great, but start also doing projects. Get some real data. Don't go to Kaggle. Kaggle's lovely if you want to learn how to program on top of data. You want to see other people make great code, but get some real data. Download your bank transactions. Get the data from your smart energy meter. See if you can make a model that predicts your energy consumption, or see if you can find an appliance that you should replace and actually can win itself back. Find a job or internship, work for someone you like, who challenge you, and actually start doing the work. So don't keep training, just start doing things. Portfolio is more valuable than a resume.
Great, thank you so much.
Thanks you for having me.
Thank you, Coen. Thank you for everyone who's watching. We will also be uploading this session. You can also be watching back some of our older sessions with, for example, a data science product manager or a data scientist on the YouTube channel. So we hope to see you in the future sessions as well. And again, big thank you to Coen, and everyone have a lovely evening.
Thank you very much.